Hey guys, so today we are going to go over the Photoshop tools, and I covered most of them during our last face-to-face lecture, but some of you were missing from class that day, so I thought I'm going to go over the tools once again and let you know what each one of them does, because you will need Photoshop for your magazine covers. I'll be happy to answer your questions, so make sure if something doesn't make sense or if you just want to ask a specific question about a tool or about Photoshop, get back to me, let me know, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. So the first thing that I did is I found the picture that I need for my cover. Now, most of you will either take the picture and use your own picture, or you are going to um, find a picture online and get the rights to use that picture on your cover. So after I found the picture on Google, and I've guided you on how to find high resolution pictures on the internet, I created a folder. It's very important that you have a folder with all the elements in that folder. So if you take a look, my folder right now is on this on my desktop, and it's called Photoshop Tools. And if you look in my folder, there's this picture of Tom Hanks. So I'm gonna do a right click, um, open with Photoshop, and then this should pop up in Photoshop, which it did right here. Now let me minimize my folder and come back to Photoshop. So excuse me, there are a couple of steps that you must take before you actually start working on the picture. A very important aspect is that you make sure your picture is 300 pixels in resolution. Now, how do you identify that? So it's quite easy. When Photoshop is opened on your screens, all you gotta do is go to image, click on image, scroll down to image size, hit on image size, and there it gives you the directions of your image. So it tells you the properties of your image. It tells you that the width of your image is 35 inches, the height is 39, and the resolution is 72. Now it's very important, I think by default, your Photoshop would have this resemble selected. Unresemble it, so unselect the resemble button so that the width, the height, and the resolution, they're all three linked together. Now what I'm going to do next is I will adjust my resolution. So I'm going to type in 300, and I don't have to explain why 300, because I've mentioned it a lot of times that when you're working with high quality type print publications, the resolution has to be high enough in order to be able to see the color and have it look nice and professional. So you saw when I adjusted it to 300, my width and height changed. So my initial width was 35 inches. It's now 8.5 inches, which is great. That's actually going to work perfect for my project, because when we think of the size of your magazine cover, it's going to be of a custom letter size, which is 8.5 by 11. So it's still going to give me some space for my headline, which is wonderful. I'm going to hit OK now. And this is now the image that, or the new resized image that I will be working with. It's not the initial one, but it's this one. Now, another thing that I do afterwards is that I always try to save my resized image. And I do that because, well, things happen, accidents happen, especially with technology nowadays. So if I lose my picture, then I can always go back and my resized picture, I can always go back, open it, because I've saved it and it's in my folder. So let's go ahead and save it. Now, to save an image, you will follow these steps. You will do File, scroll down to Save As, hit Save As, and here, what I usually do, and most of you already know, I just type a number 1 in front of my original name of my picture. That kind of tells me that's my password. It tells me that this is my adjusted size image. And where will I save it in? In my folder, which is called Photoshop Tools. And you see there's already something in that folder. Now, another detail that I have to pay attention to is the format of my image, which is a JPEG, and that's what I actually need. So I'm gonna hit Save Now and hit OK. And I'm done. Now I have this image resized and saved in my folder. So let's begin with the tools now. Well, before we go on with the tools, it's important that you understand what you see on the screen. So these things right here, okay, let me minimize my Photoshop a bit because I don't see my layers. There they are. Let me minimize it just a bit more. Okay, so what you see right now is a couple of very important elements that you will need when you work in Photoshop. The very first thing is probably your image is under the software. It's probably sitting right here. Now I dragged mine down, and I always do because I like to have my documents side by side when I work on them in Photoshop. So that's what you see right here. Now the tools menu is right here on the left. So these are the tools that you will be utilizing for your magazine project. The application frame is right behind this image, which I also call the working table or the working desk, is where I place everything and I look at it and I work on it. Now another important detail is the control menu right here on the top. So the control menu is the menu that gives additional options to the tool that you're working with. Now take a look. If I'm clicked on my move tool, look at the control menu. It looks different than when I'm clicked on the marquee tool, and so on. And finally, you see this menu on the far right. So you see the color swatches, which we'll come back to it in a minute. But what I wanted to show you, or what I want you to pay attention to, is the layers menu right here. So you see layers, and it tells me that right now I am on my background layer, and my background layer is locked. You see this lock right here. Now, to make sure that these things are opened on your screen, or they're working, they are active on your screen, what you have to do is to make sure they're selected. How do you find them? In the main menu of Photoshop, so this is the main menu, Photoshop CC, File, Edit, Image, and so on. Under Window, go on Window and click on Window, and make sure these things that are selected here on my software, they're selected on yours as well. So make sure control a color is selected or is working, layers, properties, application frame, options, and tools. So properties is actually the control menu. I named it the control menu because it's very similar to InDesign, but in Photoshop it's actually called properties. Now for instance, let's unselect properties, and when I unselected properties, the properties menu is gone. So to come back to it, all I gotta do is go back to Window and select properties, and that's where it's gonna go. Now let's move on with the tools. So the very first tool is called the Move tool, and the Move tool does what it actually says it does. It moves things. So right now I don't have a whole lot of things to move, but I can actually move my image. So if I click on it, it tells me you can't move it yet. Why? It explains to me why. It says that the currently selected layer is a background layer, and it's asking me, do you want to convert it to normal layer? And I'll just say yes. So when I said yes, you see how my Photoshop, my image moved. You see the background layer right there. Let me okay, so I actually showed you the lock key, but I didn't unlock it. So make sure you unlock your image to be able to make changes or manipulations on the image. Now the following tool is called the marquee tool. And if you take a look, most of the tools have a bottom error. When I do right click on that error, on the tool, arrow, why did I say error? So it's an arrow. When I do right click, you see that it has additional options for that tool. So it's the same exact logic of the tool, but maybe the shape of the tool is a little bit different. So let's, for instance, click on the rectangular marquee tool. I've clicked on it, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to drag a rectangular shape. When I did, now you see how Tom Hanks' head is selected. If I want to move it, I need to go back and click on my move tool, click, drag, and there it goes. So one very important detail about Photoshop is that you have to make sure you're clicked on the right tool. Otherwise, Photoshop won't know what you want to do. So if I go back and click on my marquee tool, and let's select the elliptical marquee tool now. Let me, it's going to get a marquee shape of the tool, and now I can click and move it, and there it goes. So you get what the marquee tool does. Now let's move on to the lasso tool. The lasso tool is a smarter version of the marquee tool. So what the lasso tool does, it makes freehand selections. So you can actually manipulate the selection by dragging it using your hand and selecting whatever you need, and then either change the color of it, move it, or do whatever you'd prefer. So I clicked on my tool, and you see how now I am moving my hand. Well, you don't see my hand moving, but you see the tool on my screen moving, which shows to you that I am manipulating it. A very important aspect of the lasso tool is that you always close it. You go back to that beginning point and you close it. If you don't close it, which I'm not gonna close it now, I'm gonna remove my hand from my mouse and take out my hand from my cursor and see how it's gonna close automatically, but it's not gonna do a good job to close it around the shape that you need. So for the lasso tool, again, it's important that you open the selection and you close the selection where you need it. Otherwise, you won't be able to get it do what you want it to do.